Sir, shall I admit the participant?
Yes, please, sir.
Ma'am, please. Ramya, ma'am.
Sir, shall I start, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible now clearly?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. I'll start now. A very pleasant morning to one and all present here. In this pleasant morning, we welcome you all for this session, Organ on Chip in Microfluidics, of 2-week certificate course on microfluidics organized by Center for Micro Nano Design and Fabrication in association with Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Savitha Engineering College, Chennai. Without much delay, let us start the session with the introduction of our chief guest, Dr. Kaushik Guha. Dr. Kaushik Guha is an optimistic researcher and assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Silchar. He has sound knowledge in MEMS, NEMS, VLSI design, analog circuit design, and VLSI. He is a great leader and team worker, leading successfully his department from long 10 years. He is now an Associate Dean of Students' Welfare in NIT Silchar. He has established and has been running National MEMS Design Center with an uplifted patient. MEMS Lab is helping illuminating in the department by support so many research scholars to pursue their work. His profound interest towards MEMS designing has made him as one of the leading researchers not only in NIT Silchar but in the country with research articles in highly reputed journals. He has published more than 70 journal papers in IEEE, Springer, Elsewhere, etc. and 60 conference papers in national and international conferences. Dr. Guha is a senior member of IEEE and is a member of many professional bodies like IEI, SCCI, IIAM, etc. He has been an active and regular reviewer of various journals and conferences since 2015. Teaching is a hot for Dr. Guha. He deals classes with exceptional sincerity and motivation. He believes in students or builders of next world-class technology. He has received number of awards like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Informer Award 2018, Outstanding Facility in Engineering under WIFA 2018, and Research Excellence Award 2020 and Young Researchers Achievers Award 2020. Dr. Guha has backed a number of R&D projects from various government organizations like Special Manpower Development Project from MeitY Government of India, Horizon 2020 funded international project with Tyndall National Institute of Ireland and has been associated with it since long time. Dr. Guha delivered many lectures in conferences, seminars, FDPs, and training programs. He is currently supervising 8 PhD scholars in the field of MEMS and VLSI. His current research interests include mimicking human body functions using MEMS technology, RF MEMS, bio-MEMS, MEMS energy harvesting, design and development of smart sensors for IoT, VLSI circuit design and optimization. We are happy to have you with us, sir. Now, I would kindly request our chief guest to take over the session. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction. It is my privilege that to deliver some research functions of my institute and of my students also in this virtual media to all the students and all the faculties of your institute. And I'm very happy to be associated with the Savitha Engineering College. And this is the second time I hope that I have been delivering some talk. In the few days back, I was also present as a guest of the conference. So I enjoyed that event also. So thank you. So now just I am sharing the screen.
Yes, sir.
So is it okay? Visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
sir, it is visible.
Okay. Yeah. So today actually I will be delivering something about the MEMS and microfluidics. That is the main pillar of the organ on chip technology. You know, the nowadays the organ on chip, the lab on chip technology is very, very emerging. The lot of peoples in our country and also outside our country, in abroad, in Europe, in USA, in South America, North America, everywhere, they they are working on something they are busy in finding out something, some mechanism with the help of this technology to find this type of deadly viruses like our COVID-19 or other some viruses also. So this in this time actually, so this kind of lectures and this talk actually very, very relevant. So on this actually topic, I will briefly introduce about the my institute first, then obviously then because maybe you know or you may not know about the NIT Silchar. I belongs to this NIT Silchar. Then I will go through the brief introduction of the human physiology, then overview of the MEMS technology, microfluidics technology. Then I will briefly discuss on the lab on chip devices and the coming technology, modern and future lab on chip devices. Then I will talk on my research. So we have started the small research on this field also. So I will talk about that. This is kidney and kidney on chip, and then present the some of the research scenario in my institute and specifically in MEMS and microfluidics in my lab. So let's start by our the information from our institute that you can see the NIT Silchar. I think you have also seen that in the map, the Assam. So Assam is a northeastern state in our country and is a very beautiful place all over, where you can see the tea gardens and the green, large green hillocks and natural lakes. So the NIT Silchar actually is located beside this. And from nearby that the states that from Assam, you can see it is in Bangladesh, so it's also there in country, then Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Nagaland. And the Barak River that flows across this region is known as the Barak Valley. So mostly this region actually is very popular as a name of Barak Valley. So now our campus is very big and also the green and natural campus. The sprawling, the campus, our layout is 650 acre. It is a very big campus. And just let's talk about some history of the NIT. Actually, it was earlier in the one of the oldest REC also in northeastern region. It is established 1967. Then slowly it acquired the status of deemed university in 2002. After that, the government declared the National Institutes of Technology as institutes of national importance in 2007. And moving to the awards, then we can see we have got also the number of awards, but more significantly in the last and very recent ranking of the NIRF, that we are ranked 46th, the best engineering college of our country, and the 9th among 31 NITs in the year of 2020. And also we are the best engineering college in the northeastern region after the IIT Guwahati. Now we have also wide facilities that we have 4,000 UG students, 1,000 graduate students. We have a course on MTech, MSc, MBA, PhD. We have a lot more faculties also. Then campus facilities was also, we are trying to provide the good facilities to our students, like central computing center is there. Then Wi-Fi and LAN is very common nowadays in every place. Then innovation lab and startup center is also we are hosting. So then well equipped and smart classroom and labs, then all the good hostels facilities, state of art library, high performance computing center we have, and obviously the 24/7 research facility. So there is no time in our lab actually. The enter and exit of the lab, anybody, any student can come and can exit from the lab at any time. Now, so moving to the topic. So they are actually, I will mainly human physiology, mainly I will actually describe, or I will put emphasize on the kidney, because I am working on this field, the kidney. So because there are so many things in the human body, it's not possible to talk all the human organs. So basically, I will talk on this kidney. You can see the human body actually is a one of the best example of a smart system. Nowadays, we are talking about the smart sensor, smart system, smart technology. But human body is the one of the most and best smart system, because in our human body we can have everything, every function, and that is so fantastically executed, all the function in a sequentially manner. So no machine, no smart system can do this. So this is the physical substance of the human organism, composed of so many living cells and extracellular materials organized into tissues, organs, and systems. So the human body actually consists mainly of water and organic compounds. You can see, and it is about 60% of water by weight. So in our human body, the 60% is water, and rest of the 40% other than. It may be the lymph and the bones and the other type of the lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. So it is a good mixture of all this. So in the human body, the kidney is one of the most highly differentiated organs in the body that we all know, and we must admit it is a very important organ. Nearly 30%, 30 different cell types form a multitude of filtering capillaries. You can see the figure on the kidney. Actually, this cellular diversity modulates a variety of complex physiological processes. So what are the main functions that kidney is responsible? It is the first one is the regulation of blood pressure. That is very, very important, that we are actually, people in India reported that is a high blood pressure from the age of even 20, 30 also. So because one of the main reason is the kidney is not working properly. Then the second function, solute and the water transport. So in the blood actually, so we have to flow the sufficient amount of solute and the other ions like sodium, potassium, protein, then the other type of chemical compound that is actually required for our cells. So kidney actually will do that function also. Acid base balance, because there should be a good balance between the acidic and alkaline proportion in our body, human body. So the proper balance actually is maintained by our kidney. And removal drug metabolites. So the waste product actually also our body actually will excrete some of the waste products. Okay, and that kidney is also taking about of this excretion as a form of urine or some other form. So there are a lot of very complex functions and very, very important functions also that taking care of by kidney. So to know about the kidney, okay, more. So just I have put one video here. I am just clicking on that. I hope that this will open. So after watching this video, I think it will be very, I think it will be clear that how the kidney will actually work, or it is working. So is it coming visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sir, it is visible.
Sir, whether you're playing the video?
Hello?
Sir, video is not visible, sir. We can see only the presentation screen there.
Oh. Video is not visible.
No, sir, video is not visible, sir.
Now it is also not visible.
No, sir, only your presentation screen is visible, sir, not the video.
Okay, so so I will send it later on through
Okay,
my
sir,
mail, or after the presentation, if time permits, then I will share it. Okay.
Okay, fine, sir.
So the kidney function. So we are talking about the kidney. Now the kidney, actually there are so many parts you can see. The cortex in the right hand side, the figure is there. The cortex is the outer region of the kidney. So it is the extension of the cortical tissue, contains about 1 million blood filtering nephrons. So the kidney actually contains 1 million the filtering nephrons. Then the medulla, it is called the inner region of the kidney. Then medullary pyramids. So it is formed by the collecting ducts and inner part of the kidney. Then of course the ureter, it collects the filtrate and urine, actually as in terms of the waste, that's I was just talking about, from the renal pelvis and takes it to the bladder for urination. Then renal artery and also the renal vein. What is the artery? It is the branches of the aorta bringing waste-filled blood into the kidney. So one of the job is the kidney is to regulate or to filtration. So the waste-filled blood will come into the kidney, then kidney will filtrate, and after that it will remove the filtered blood from the kidneys to the inferior vena cava. So this is something about the biologists and also the medical practitioners. They are well accustomed with this term, but still, because we are talking about the lab on chip and the organ on chip, so actually we must know about something of the human physiology. Then individual nephron cannot be seen by the naked eye, so it is very
Dr. Gohar, sir.
yeah. Hello.
Sorry to interrupt. Whether you change in the slides, we cannot see the change in slide. Only the PowerPoint window is in open state.
Oh. Now it is coming.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So the nephron is the basic structural and functional unit of the kidney, so it is kind of the unit cell of our body. So the nephron is the unit cell of the kidney. So each kidney has about 1 million nephrons. So we cannot imagine like that. So 1 million nephrons consist of a kidney. Is very small and tiny cells, and blood containing urea and metabolic waste products enters the kidney from the liver. So all the bloods actually containing the urea and some waste products also, it will come to the kidney from the liver. Then kidney will regulate and it will filtrate. After the filtration, the kidney will remove the waste product as a form of excretion. The blood is mechanically filtered to remove fluids, waste, electrolytes, acid and bases into the tubular system, while leaving blood cells, proteins and chemicals in the bloodstream. So this is the job. This function is called the filtration, ultrafiltration and the regulation of our bloods. Then what is the inside in the nephron? We can see there is a glomerulus. Actually, the people can recall that what we have already studied in our 10 or 10 plus 2 syllabus. So that's this is nothing other than this. So I think so. You can also recall your study that what you have studied in undergrad or before the under graduation also. That glomerulus, proximal tubule, thin descending limb, ascending limb, distal convoluted tubule, collecting duct and inner medullary collecting duct. So this is a very complex structure of a kidney. We can see all the tubules are like a hexagonal shape or some sorry, the helix type of shape. It is not a straight line. So and the glomerulus also you can see. So so it is not a very simple structure. Then just now let's talk about some of the kidney disease. So there are different type of diseases you can see. The glomerular diseases, Fanconi syndrome, proximal RTA, disorder of the loop of Henle, Bartter syndrome, Gitelman syndrome. This is very, very popular. If you Google it on the internet, actually by typing this type of diseases names, then you can see so many informations about this type of disease. These are very common diseases of the kidney. So the chronic kidney diseases, actually you can see the several actually reason of these chronic kidney diseases. You can see the diabetes is a very bad for the kidney. Then high blood pressure is very bad. Then heart problems and stroke, it can come from the chronic kidney disease. Obesity can be also there from the kidney disease. Then the family history actually maybe there because it kind of gene or genome type of structural resemblance will be there. Then tobacco use, actually it is very harmful. That's why people should refrain from the use of tobacco, because then it can also cause the chronic kidney disease. And obviously the age is one of the factors. So generally we say that 60+ years old people actually are more prone to this type of these chronic kidney diseases. So we have to be very, very alert. The chronic kidney disease, also called the chronic kidney failure, describes the gradual loss of kidney function. So slowly the kidney will actually lose the function without our knowledge actually. So we have to take the precautions from the starting of the day. So as per the suggestions and prescription from the doctor or healthcare physicians, we have to actually start our day. Then most kidney diseases attack the nephrons. This damage may leave kidneys unable to remove waste. Because obviously if nephron is not working, so kidney will not perform their task. So the regulation of the blood, filtration of the blood, the excretion of the waste products. So all these type of important process will be hampered. So, and then obviously it can lead to a deadly disease and even death also. You can have a higher risk of kidney disease if you have diabetes. So that's why actually we are very much actually worried about the diabetes. Okay. So obviously we have to take the food according to that. High blood pressure is very, very bad for the health, or the family member, close family member with the kidney disease. So this is actually the suggestions and the comments from the doctors, because doctors, they are medical practitioners, they know well it. So actually I have just written after consulting with one of the doctors, those who are practicing in the nephrology field. So chronic kidney diseases damages the nephron slowly over several years. So now we can see the statistics. You can see the CKD. The figure is very huge. This is the in 2013. The how much did is 956,246, 9,56,246 deaths directly related to the CKD in 2013, and I think in 2020 this figure will be very, very high. 1 in 57 deaths worldwide due to the CKD, the chronic kidney disease. Then 134% increase in the number of deaths from chronic kidney disease from 1990 to 2013. So how rapidly this chronic kidney disease and kidney disease actually is rising. So in Indian scenario also you can see the 17.4% CKD stage. So it's not a very huge that 17.4% CKD stage. Then this from the domiciliary community-based camps, hospital-based camps. So they have actually gone for the study and they have reported the data like that. So in India also this chronic kidney disease is also very, very severe. So in this part actually you can see in the maps where the chronic kidney disease is actually coming very fast. You can see in 2001 to 2003 in this map only the red zone is only the southern portion of the map. And now the red actually belongs to 46 to 65, the age standardized death rates. 46 to 65 is the, here you can see is the red one, and the other zone are also is given. 36 to 45 is orange, 30 to 35 is the gray type of thing. Now in the 2010 to 2030, you can see how rapidly these chronic kidney diseases and the death due to the CKD actually is rising. So it is a very, very alarming situation. It is undoubtedly. The prevalence of the kidney patients worldwide, you can see in India, it is 117 the kidney patient, 117 million the kidney patients in India. You can see with compared with the rest of the world, Russia, USA, Latin America, Middle East, where so India's figure, you can see the bar chart is very, very high. So also you can see there is a female versus male actually ratio. The diabetes by age and sex, you can see. So the female and male. So in India also, not in India, in all over the country, you can see the people are suffering from the diabetes. And diabetes is very, very bad. Okay, it can also lead to the deadly chronic kidney diseases or acute kidney failure also. Number of diabetics will rise to 642 million by 2040. So huge. So we have to now sit back and we have to take the necessary measures, because this is the time, otherwise we will miss our lives. Then this is another also the scenario. You can see 10.4% among men. The chronic kidney diseases worldwide is 10.4% is among men and 11.8% among women. So little bit higher in the women. So according to the study, we can see. So it can lead to prolonged hospital stay, increased hospital cost, disability, increased chance of dying. So all these type of things actually I have put it here to actually to disseminate the information of this disease and the recent statistics also of these kidney diseases to you. So this is the global prevalence of CKD is estimated to 8 to 16%, and obviously it is growing. In India, it is ranging from 4% to 17.2% with wide regional differences. The CKD is associated with high morbidity and mortality with approximately 735,000 deaths annually. And now also we are actually very cautious about this COVID, and that we have also come to know different doctors they have also reported that these chronic kidney diseases also is actually very prone and very dangerous in terms of the COVID also. So those persons who are having this type of kidney diseases and if they are infected with COVID, so actually they are even actually it can lead to the death. So that's why the CKD is very, very important to study, and to stop that CKD, we have to work. Then what are the diagnosis methods? Some blood tests are there. That is a usual kidney function test. Look for the level of waste products such as creatinine and urea. So doctors usually prescribe this type of test, and after the the reporting this type of the quantity, okay, in our blood, the creatinine and urea, so doctors can predict whether you have some disease, kidney disease or not. Then urine test is another medium to check for your kidneys working well or not. Then some kind of imaging test also there, some ultrasound to assess your kidney structures and size. And then removing a sample of kidney tissue for testing. This is called a biopsy type of thing. So your doctor can recommend kidney biopsy to remove sample of kidney tissue. Then they will actually do some kind of investigation of your kidney cells, and then they can see that if there is something wrong in your kidney or not. So it will be, the biopsy sample will be sent to the lab for testing to determine what is the causes of your kidney problem. Now we also know the dialysis techniques. There are some kind of dialysis techniques because a lot of people are also suffering from this type of dialysis. So dialysis means when you have to go to the hospitals, okay, and it can take several times, very painful also, costly also. There are 2-3 type of dialysis you can see. It is a peritoneal dialysis, then the hemodialysis, okay, and big dialysis machines are also required in dialysis. Dialysis actually it is a machine. It is out. This machine actually will regulate the blood and filter the blood because your kidney is not working now. So kidney cannot do this function. So you have to depend on the other machines. And so this is the dialysis machine. So it will take out blood from your body, then it will regulate, then it will remove the waste product from the blood, and then it will again fill the filtered blood into your body. So this process is called the dialysis. So it takes a very several times, okay, several time consuming job. It is bulky, very complicated. 3 times a week, every time 2 to 4 hours you have to devote for the dialysis. So it is not feasible at all. Very painful treatment. Then there must be so many water of your body, maybe wastage. The cost is also very important factor in the dialysis. So as calculated by one of the doctor that I have working with this doctor actually. So he is telling that it costs around rupees 70 to 75 to 100 per hour. So it is not for all kind of class of people. So the dialysis. So it is not a good solution. Then another thing is that kidney transplantation. You can see the successful kidney transplantation, the best possible quality of life for patients with end-stage renal diseases. But the lack of awareness, low education levels, lack of clear national policy, because our national policy is not like that. So if you want, then also you cannot transplant your kidney. Okay, so you have to find out donor. Then there is some regulatory approval. Then so many procedures. So it is a very complex thing. So due to this also, this transplantation also is not coming in a proper way in our country actually. So then again, the drug testing, you can see that drug testing, there is a 3-4 phases. Phase 1 is the discovery and development. Phase 2 is the preclinical research. That means the in vitro. There is a 2 term is very important in our biomems also, or biology, that in vivo and in vitro. In vitro, it's not in our human body. It is outside, okay, of the human body. Like you can test for some kind of mice or rats, okay, some other animals. And in vivo means then you have to involve in our human body if something testing has to be done. So phase 3 is the clinical research. So then actually you can go for clinical research. So in this phase 3 also there are so many phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4. Now actually we are very much familiar about the vaccine also of our COVID, because it has to pass so many phases, and also it has to involve so many thousands of volunteers also, okay, who have this COVID, who have been infected, and then the drug will be applied and then it will be tested. If there is no complication, if there is no side effect, so after long time, then we can say the vaccine is okay, or it is good, or it can be applicable to all the people, but not before that. And also the FDA review is also there. The FDA team will review that your drug testing procedure and drug, and after it will complete so many phases, then your drug will be ready. So it is a long time taking procedure. So 2D models and the problems, what are that? There are 2D cell culture that are also there, that is used in analyzing all types of body functioning, but 2D models are not accurate, though analysis is simple. So for this reason, the researchers shifted to animal model experiments. Just I was talking about the animal model. You can see the animal. So we can choose the animal. You have to test your drugs and other researches into the animal models. But also animal models is not also the perfect way, because animal physiological function cannot fully mimic our human physiological functions of all the organs. So this is the reality actually. So after testing of some kind of drug, okay, on the this rabbit also you can see what is the side effect this is coming. So this actually cannot imitate or mimic fully uh, with our human body function. So this monument, a very interesting picture you can see. Just what is that? It is this monument actually situated in Russia. Okay, so it commemorates the fact that sacrifice of the mice in genetic research used to understand biological and physiological mechanisms for developing new drugs and curing of diseases. So it is the statue of the sacrifice of the mice. So in Russia, this statue is still there. So actually people are used to actually test their drugs, okay, into the mice. And then if the test result is positive, good, then we can say, okay, then it can be applied to the humans. Now, what is the motivation now? So the motivation is the kidney disease spreads like slow poison, okay, that effects of failure are permanent. The dialysis machine we have seen is very bulky and so many disadvantages are there. Very less research conducted to make it user friendly, because dialysis still is a very cumbersome process in the hospitals. You have to go to the hospitals frequently, okay, in a week 2-3 times, and you have to spend hours, 2-3 hours for the dialysis. So there is no much less research to make it as a user friendly of the dialysis machine. The NIH funding for research, NIH, the National Institute of Health, is the big funding body of the USA. You can see in the Google that funding for research on kidney disease is very less, $29 per patient per year. Whereas as on cancer research, it is $560 per patient per year, and AIDS research 3064. So the kidney research, the funding is very, very less as compared to the cancer and the AIDS type of researches. Hence, there is a desperate need to conduct research on development of artificial kidney. So the people are working on this to making the artificial kidney some implantable, small, tiny the kidney that can be transplanted into the body, and it can work like a function of our human kidney. So what to do that? So what will be the next? So obviously this will be supported by the MEMS technology. So MEMS is the technology that it can support this type of kidney on chip or lab on chip devices or this type of transplantable kidney. Okay, so what is MEMS? MEMS is the micro electromechanical systems. So it is the beautiful domain of an engineering that it can embedded or it can integrate both the functions, electrical as well as the mechanical functions, in a same platform. That's why it is called the micro electromechanical system. Before MEMS, actually we are talking about the electronic system only. So where only electrical signals, then signal processing, then electrons, holes, the MOSFET, the other type of CMOS type of devices we are very much accustomed. But what is the MEMS actually? MEMS actually, this type of systems first actually convey the message that to the academic community, research community, and industrial people also, that not only electronics can solve the purpose, we have to integrate other domain like mechanical also. So it is a combination of mechanical system with electronic system or electronic signal processing, so that we can make a fully compact and system on a single platform. So this is the MEMS technology. So the MEMS, if you are talking about the MEMS, obviously first question is around is actually arises into our mind is, what is the size of the MEMS devices? It is name is actually micro electromechanical. So obviously it should be in the micron size. So what is the exactly size? You can see it is a size will be 1 micrometer to 1 millimeter range. Of this tiny range, small range also, you can develop your MEMS sensors and actuators and so many other novel and innovative things. So the size is lying between the viruses, bacteria, genomes also, and also the size is not very actually the lengthy or type of very more than there's in a wafer size. Okay, so it is a in between the virus, bacteria, and we can see in the right hand side it is some of the chip and some of the wafer sizes. So the sizes lying between that 1 micrometer to 1 millimeter, and within that size people can do the wonder. It has mainly 3 processing part actually MEMS. For the one is the input. Input is nothing but sensors. The sensors will gather the information by measuring chemical, thermal and biological informations or signals from the environment. It will sense. Then microelectronic ICs, what is the job of that? It will act as the decision making piece of the system, because sensor only can sense, but after the sensing of the signal you have to process. But without processing, then actually it don't solve any purpose. So for processing of the signals we need the help of microelectronic devices and circuits and ICs. Then after that, if you process the signal, but something you have to do, otherwise there will be no output of your system. So the output part will be taken care of by the actuators. So actuators will actuate, or it will work something on depending of your sense signal and the process signal from the environment. So we can find MEMS in the computer printers. That is today is also very, very popular. Okay, in inkjet print heads people are using today. Automobile sector, airbag sensors, car, in car also nowadays there are so many type of sensors are there. Then projectors also, in micromirror technology, it is also the MEMS technology. Cell phones, nowadays in cell phone, around 20 to 30 sensors that actually the cell phone can have. We can see lots of type of sensors in our cell phone. It may be accelerometer, magnetometer, humidity sensor, pressure sensor, every type of sensor is coming. Lab on chip, the today's topic, obviously the microfluidics we are talking about today. Optical devices, micromirrors, then lots of other things. It is quite a big list. Then the question is why we should go micro, why we should not go to the macro length or the larger length. So the micro devices has some point of support. It has a smaller devices because require less material to make. Obviously if your device is small, so material will be required small. Then smaller devices require less energy to run, obviously, because if you have a large device, we know the power also the requirement is also more, but small tiny devices power requirement is less. Nowadays power is a great factor. People are actually shrinking the power and the voltage levels into the devices. We came through the different reports. Then redundancy also, because the same sensor, if it is a tiny small, you can use it number of times. Suppose in space application, suppose if your one sensor failed, then very difficult, you cannot revert it back. So that's why you have to organize multiple sensor for the same functions. Okay, like a pressure sensing kind of thing, you have to put number of sensors for that. So one sensor failed to work, then other sensor can take over and your job at least can be done. So redundancy also a very important point. Then micro devices, because it is less material, maybe you can predict the cost, less costly, and also it will support batch fabrication process. Batch process means we have also it is popular in the IC technology that the batch process means it can the throughput will be very high. It can produce so many MEMS type of devices and sensors, okay, in a given time at a single stretch. So this is the point of the why we should go for micro. So this is the another then the same thing actually. It is robust, sensitive, reliable, implantable. It can support higher frequency because the low device region, low device area means so it must support the higher frequency. Okay, because we know the transition time is the inversely proportional to the frequency. So the time taken for an electron to move from one distance to another distance is very short. Then obviously the frequency will be very high. So it is good for high frequency devices. Then for response is fast, also disposable, we can use and then we can throw it back. But there are some disadvantages. Maybe it is a size and invasive, maybe cost, maybe one factor, because we have predicted that cost will be so less, but nowadays the complex sensors that is coming, it is no cost is not so many, actually small. So adverse effect on measurement, power may be one problem, power dissipation may be one of the problem. It can be generating noise more, so that also people are working on that. Heat dissipation, another problem. The waste product, also the waste of the material is also high in MEMS, because uh, so this kind of things actually are every sector and every field, the disadvantage will be there. It is a part of the research. So but our main target is to take the disadvantage, to go for study, to make strong our background, and then we have to propose a solution how to battle with this disadvantage or this type of demerits. Then it will open a new research in that domain. So this is also true in the MEMS. The materials for MEMS, we can see it is a wide variety of materials. If you compare with the ICs, so ICs still it is actually dependent on the silicon and technology, or the gallium arsenide nowadays coming, but still it is silicon dependent. But in MEMS, not only silicon, it may be polymers, ceramic materials, semiconductors, metals, composite materials, everything. So the glass is also used as a substrate material. Ceramic can be also a substrate material, and plastic can also be a substrate. Then thin film, you can see it may be polysilicon, dielectric. Then packaging also, it may be metal packaging, plastic packaging, and also you can see the colored that band also. There are some materials that I tried to put to make you actually the known that there are wide varieties of the metals and semiconductors in the microsystems. So it is not like that IC technology. So it is a wide variety. You have a wide flexibility to choose your material according to the your demand. For transfer function point of view, we can say MEMS actually is a transfer function that makes actually it will transform the higher version to the lower version or smaller version. You can see the pressure sensor in earlier it was a big type of thing, but nowadays pressure sensor is coming very small. Then microphone, earlier days it was a big microphone, but nowadays coming as a small, very small microphone in our mobile phone also. It is a simple planar technology. Okay, the microphone is coming. It is the MEMS microphone. So this type of thing actually, the sensors are earlier days also there, not this much of variety, but still the sensors are there in earlier days, but in a bigger form. It is a very bulky type of thing. But nowadays, MEMS actually convert these bulky type of sensors into a very implantable, very small and tiny form. The manufacturing process, we can see the MEMS. First, we have to design our MEMS structures. Then we should go for fabrication. After fabrication, then we should go for packaging, and then obviously it will be for testing. So this is the normal any testing and fabrication actually rules design. Okay, for it is also the same in the IC technology also. There are some fabrication process that we can see. So it's a very common to IC technology also. We have studied about that: photolithography, ion implantation, then CVD, sputtering or physical vapor deposition, epitaxy, etching. This is a common thing. So MEMS are also supporting these fabrication techniques, but there are two main techniques in MEMS that is called the micro machining techniques. What are those? What is the bulk micro machining techniques? This is the bulk micro machining technique where we can see the bulk of the substrate. Here we can see the bulk of the substrate actually is being cut away or the etched, okay, to form some kind of diaphragm type of structure. So here bulk of the substrate actually is hampered, is interrupted. That's why it is called the bulk micro machining. And in contrast to the bulk micro machining, surface micro machining, we can see here the silicon substrate is not hampered or not altered. It is the same as it is, and after the silicon, above the silicon substrate, we can grow some kind of structures. It is called cantilever type of structures. So in surface micro machining, substrate will be same as it is. You can grow the structure layer by layer on above that. But in bulk micro machining, you have to apply some machining techniques within the bulk of the material. The third one is the Liga process. It is a high aspect ratio machining process. So to make a very high resolution type of structure, like high aspect ratio means the structure which is having thickness to or height to thickness ratio is very high. That means the height is very large, okay, and but very thin. So it is a type of thing, okay, suppose. So this type of structures, very high precision structures, can be formed using the Liga process. So there is one example how the bulk micromachining happens actually layer by layer. We are trying to fabricate one diaphragm of a pressure sensor. Now we can see the first step, we have taken a silicon wafer. Then we have deposited some growing silicon dioxide layer. After that, we have coated the photoresist. Then we have aligned the mask for our photolithography. Then UV ray is exposed. Then this is the unexposed region will be removed by some developer solution like that. And then again we have to etch some of the SiO2 with hydrofluoric acid solution like that. And then we have to remove the unexposed resist also. This is called stripping effect. This stripping is done. Now again we have to etch the silicon anisotropically with KOE solution, so we can form this type of structure. So this is the example of a bulk micromachining. Now we can see the etching. Here we can see the etching actually two type of. One is isotropic etching, another is the anisotropic etching. Isotropic etching means where etching profile is uniform. You can see. So in the lateral dimension and vertical direction, the etching rate is uniform. So that's why it can have a very good type of shape, circular shape or uniform shape. But in anisotropic etching, you can see the vertical penetration is very high. The rate etching rate is high, but in lateral penetration in this side, it is not high. So that's why it can create some kind of slanted architecture. So this type of etching is called the anisotropic etching. Due to the anisotropic etching, we can make some kind of complex type of or non-uniform type of structures like this type of structure, some groove, some pyramid, some nozzle, some spokes like structure, some geared box like structures type of thing. So it can be supported by anisotropic etching, not the isotropic etching. Similarly, the surface micromachining, we are trying to create a cantilever using the process. You can see the steps. So after the silicon substrate, we can grow some polyimide layer in the green band. Then we will etch some part of the layer like that. Then we'll deposit the aluminum layer like that. This is the metal part, the structural layer. And then we can see we'll remove this green layer actually by that. So after removing this green layer, this gray type of layer looks like a freestanding type of thing. One end is free, another end is fixed. So this structure is called the cantilever, where one end is completely free and another end is the completely fixed. So this kind of structure we can create by very easily using a surface micromachining process. You can see the surface micromachining has a good resemblance with this figure. It's a green, the plate is a flat plate. On the green plate, you can, or your kids can grow type or make some different type of structure like house and this type of thing. But we are not interrupting our green plate. So this is the surface micromachining. And in bulk micromachining, just reverse. So the application of MEMS also we can see that I have already told you so many wide type of application, wide range of application. The MEMS technology can be seen nowadays in everywhere, because in smart sensors and smart system, if we are talking about, and without the sensor, we cannot talk about any smart system. And the sensors that is coming, obviously it is coming from the MEMS technology. So this sensor. So in biomedical field, in defense sector, in aerospace sector, in automotive sector, biotechnology sector, telecommunication, chemistry, information technology, everywhere, the MEMS actually have been invested. MEMS type of devices are playing the key role. The biology, we can see the blood sensors lab on a chip, that today we are talking about that. So this is the good combination of MEMS with biology, okay, and also MEMS with medicine. So nowadays, MEMS can be integrated with the medicine also, with biology also. So this is called the biomems. Optical MEMS also, MEMS with the application of optics, okay, some DLP projector scanners, optical MEMS. Inertial measurement also, some kind of accelerometers, gyroscopes, okay, are the product of this. Then pressure measurement, we can see types of pressure sensors can be also easily developed using the MEMS. Then RF MEMS, we are talking radio frequency MEMS, then this type of things, because in next 5G or 6G communication, the RF MEMS is going to play vital role. So that's why the lot of interests are growing on these RF MEMS for the next wireless communications. Okay, that is coming actually very recently. It is coming. Other technologies also we can see there are a lot of technologies. This is just few examples I have given, but if you are interested, then you can go through the net or internet also. You can see there are lots of examples and application areas where MEMS sensors are being used. Something talking about the actuation principles. There are 4 mainly actuation techniques in the MEMS there. It is electrostatic, very simple process, very low power, fast response. Then it may be piezoresistive, maybe change in resistance with strain. This is well known fact to us. And then maybe thermal, it is also the thermal gradient, okay, it will actually, the changes in the temperature profile, then it can actuate, like Peltier effect, we have already studied. Piezoelectric effect, it is also very, very popular, the change in electrical polarization with stress. So if you apply some stress on some material, then it will develop some voltage. And these piezoelectric type of devices are viewing as in sensors, okay, in so many places, in many, many examples that they are using piezoelectric based sensors, electrostatic based sensors, or piezoresistive based sensors. So this is one part. This is the MEMS was another technology that is for the lab on chip. Okay, and this the second part is the microfluidics. So what is the microfluidics? It is the study of fluids in micro level. That is called the microfluidics. So the very small amount of fluids you have to study, very precise control and manipulation of fluids behavior that are geometrically constrained to a small scale, because you have a small place and just your one drop of a fluid can fill the small tiny chamber, okay, of some actually micro channel, and then you have to study the fluid behavior, fluid characteristics, fluid dynamics. So this type of studies actually is called the microfluidic based study. So the fluids are directed, mixed, separated, or manipulated to attain multiplexing, automation, and high throughput systems. So it can be fluids, you can be mixed, it can be separated also. We can see so how it is done. The micro channels network that that is for the lab on chip. We will see the micro channels, because very small teeny channels, okay, tiny amount like a nanometer range of channel or micrometer range of channel that is filled with some fluid. In microfluidics, actually we have to study the fluid behavior in this micro channel. What is the requirement of this? Why it is being studied? Because it can help to the lab on chip, then detection of pathogens. Nowadays people are working the pathogen detection, virus detection, bacteria detection using this microfluidics. DNA analysis, RNA analysis. Microfluidic devices exploit the physical and chemical properties of the liquids and gases at micro scale. So obviously you have to study a lot about the chemical, physical properties of your liquids and gases in a micro scale, not in a very big scale. So in micro scale, actually, if you study something, some extra care actually you have to pay, some extra physics, then it will be coming. It is not like that, the large volume of the study. Okay, so there are some examples. You can see the microfluidics where the blood is coming like that. Okay, in that. So you can see in this figure, there are so many channels, main channel and some branches there. So the cell is coming and some kind of sorting is also there. So according to the size of the shell, you can short it through the different channels, or you can apply some electric field or magnetic field also in the across these micro channels, and then you can also detect some kind of things using the this magnetic field behavior acting on that particles. So this is called actually hydrodynamic cell sorting. Hydrodynamics, what is the hydrodynamics? Actually there are two type of physics are there, phenomena. One is hydrodynamic and another is the aerodynamic. So hydrodynamic means some particle actually suspended in a some liquid medium, and if you want to study of their behavior like forces, torque, okay, of this particle in the liquids, then it is the hydrodynamic study, the hydrophysics, hydrodynamics. And the aerodynamics means the in place of liquid, if it is a gas medium, suppose air, then it will be the aerodynamic study, because in aeroplane where actually it is the study of the aerodynamics is very much required, okay, to study of our aeroplane, the size of the plane, the our external body of the aeroplane, how it will be designed, our spacecraft, okay, type of thing. So this is the aerodynamic study. So hydrodynamic is applicable for the fluid samples. Here you can see the red blood cell, white blood cell, CTC level, magnetic bed. So everything can be sorted by a proper designing of a microchannel with some external effect like magnetic effect or some electric effect. We can sort, we can mix, okay, we can separate the various type of particles inside our blood components. It may be RBCs, maybe white blood cells, maybe other components. Even we can sort it also some protein component, sodium component, magnesium component, then albumin type of component from our blood. So very small sample is required for microbiology study, low fluid volume consumption. So very easy to actually in that case, because you do not have require a very large volume of setup, because you have to study very small amount of fluid, okay. So that's why very small sample is required, low fluid volume is consumption, fast analysis, because your fluid quantity is very small. So I think analysis will also be faster. Response time will be very short. Compactness of the system, because you can create a complex microfluidic system in a short chamber, because you do not have to have a very big type of labs, very big type of labs for your study of the microfluidic behavior, because you need a small lab, but you need the proper equipments, of course. Safer platform for chemical, radioactive and biological studies. For biological analysis, you can see whole biological process integrated and simplified for the end users. Higher throughput, multiplexed and highly paralleled assays, faster analysis due to shorter reactions and separation times, portable devices for point of care applications. So microfluidic chip actually nowadays we are using. It can be implantable patches onto your skin also. It will detect some point of care your body functions, some temperature levels, glucose level also, pressure level also. Low reagent consumption, because you do not require very large amount of reagent for chemical reactions. Global cost reduction per analysis, accurate measurement, microfluidics allowing to increase the measurement resolution in given application. So these are the all good points. That's why actually it supports the good biological analysis, the microfluidics. Now there are several part of the microfluidics. One is the droplet microfluidics. Droplet microfluidics, it is not actually the continuous flow of the fluid, okay. Some kind of droplet actually is enough, okay. Suppose if you have a syringe, all of us we have seen actually the syringe, if you push some kind of fluid pumping, okay, by the syringe, so what is that? So it will coming as a droplet form, okay. So that one droplet actually can be enough to study the behavior, okay, the physical property, chemical property of this kind of thing. So it is also called a digital fluidic operations. that can be programmable and also the reconfigurable. So nowadays, very emerging topic, and people are working on that in droplet microfluidics. You can see the some of the example of the droplet microfluidics. So then where the microfluidic lies actually in every field. In engineering, microfluidics comes, biotechnology, physics, chemistry, biochemistry, nanotechnology, everywhere. But the typical components, some examples of the microfluidics, you can see the micro ducts, it is there in the micro ducts. Then micro nodules are also there. A lot of people are working on these micro nodules, where small amount of actually liquid will be actually coming out of these micro nodules. Okay, very precise control of the drug you can achieve with this type of nodules. Micro pumps are also there. Micro turbines, all are in micro form. Micro valves, okay, for flow, controlling the flow path. Okay, you require the micro valves in microfluidics. Micro filters also there. You can see micro needles, or the micro needles. Okay, with the micro mixture, you can see the micro mixture. What micro needles is, that type of thing, because in micro needles, in some of the cases you can also wear it. Okay, you can implant onto your skin and it will just suck the blood, and or also it can push the some kind of medicine into your body without feeling you much pain. So micro needles technology, that's people are using the micro needles technology for this. The micro mixture, there is a small amount of very small, yeah, the length is very small in nanometer or micrometer regime. There will be a good mixing of the different type of fluids we can use for the micro mixtures. Micro reactors, micro dispensers, then micro separators. So every type of thing. So all are in micro form. All are in micro form. Can be possible using this microfluidics. Then some of the behavior of the liquids, that's I was talking about. Whenever you will shift your study from the macro domain to the micro level, then actually we have to take care of any other extra parameters or extra physics. So what are that? The surface tension. Surface tension is going to play a big role in a microscopic behavior, okay, of the fluid. In macroscopic behavior it is there, but microscopic behavior, its importance, its relevance and its point of study will be very, very much higher. The laminar flow. In laminar flow, what is there are two type of flows, you know. One is the laminar flow and another is the turbulent flow. Laminar flow is the streamline flow, we mean to say actually. So here, suppose in the flow of water in a pipe, so it is a laminar flow. Suppose a straight water pipe is there and you are pumping some water inside that, and then you can see the flow is laminar. That means all particle of the water, it is actually flowing with a uniform velocity, okay, in a straight line fashion. So it is a laminar. Then fast thermal relaxation, that is one of the domain in fluid dynamics or in mechanics also. The thermal relaxation time is faster in micro type of fluidic studies, in a small volume of the fluids. Diffusion also, you have to consider more on the diffusion properties of the microscopic fluids. Turbulence, then it is laminar flow, turbulence is absent. Okay, turbulence comes generally in other type of flows, okay, other than the laminar flow. We'll see that inertia versus viscosity, so this type of things, actually the physics will be coming into a big role, coming to play in the microfluidics. Then another of the parameter that also you can study on that, the Knudsen number, that is also one of the important fact in the microfluidics. The microfluidics, we can see the Knudsen number is of the order of 10 to the power 7, so very high. So if there is a certain threshold, that after that threshold your Knudsen number is there, then you can see there. So it is a microfluidic type of fluids. So it can obey the physics of the microfluidics. The Euler's equation, uh, this is also, yeah, you know, the fluid dynamics part. The Euler's equation is one of the very basic equation. What is that Euler's equation? It is actually the equation of the, or theorem of the laws of conservation of the mass. So again, so you have to Euler's equation or the Euler's formula you have to study to implement this type of, because you are going to play with the microfluidic or the fluids in a small amount of level. So you have to study with this Euler's equation. I'm not going to the details of that because this is actually the totally different type of study will be, the topic will be, then we'll go to into that region. The Navier-Stokes equation also, that is one of the basic equation of a fluid motion, the Navier-Stokes equation. So it is also the, you can see there are some modeling equations are also there. Just here I have put it to give you some flavor the what kind of basic mathematical models and equation actually is required to study the microfluidics and the lab on chip. So this is a very basic things, basic equations of mechanics and also the fluid mechanics. So I think you can study, those who are interested, so we can study about that, this type of theorems. Just the laminar flow, just I talked about, what is that? You can see in the figure below, what is the laminar flow, you can see. So the laminar flow, how this, the uniform lines, okay, of your fluid motion, it is the laminar flow. The parallel lines flowing nearly with little to no mixing, because there is no mixing. Okay, in the figure number B, there is a mixing, you can see. So this is not a laminar flow, but in laminar flow, there will be no mixing of that fluid lines. Then it is called as a laminar flow. Then another is the pressure driven flow. Pressure driven flow means, suppose if you have a fluid is pumped, okay, by some injection pump to the some micro channel, and then you can see the flow of the fluid, it is called the pressure driven fluids. In the pressure driven flow, we can see the fluid profile is generally not a parallel, it is actually parabolic. So this type of parabolic shape is coming. If you study deeply, okay, then you can see the nature of the fluid flow is the parabolic in nature. So that's why it is called the pressure driven flow. So some pressure is coming, you have to inject some fluids by some injection pumps into the micro channel, and then you can study their velocity, their force, their acceleration, their study. Then another type of study is the electro-osmotic flow. What is the electro-osmotic motion? A flow is the motion of fluid induced by an applied potential across the porous material, capillary tube, membrane, microchannel. So suppose if you have a fluid in microchannel and if you are applying some of the electric field, then with the effect of the electric field, if the flow happens, then this kind of flow is called the electro-osmotic flow. Because in our blood sample also, or in water also, there is a H2 and O2 ions will be there, and these are the positive. So if you apply some electric field, so obviously it will going to play with this positive and the negative ions, and that can actually affect your fluid behavior, the velocity, force also. So the electroosmosis or electroosmotic flow, the study is also another important aspect in the microfluidics. Then what are the microfluidic based devices? It may be micro drug delivery system, inject printers, glucose sensors, very common, very popular, lab on chip, organ on chip, body on chip. The micro drug delivery system that just I was telling you, you can see nowadays we are not using this big kind of syringe, okay, to deliver some localized dosage to your body. There will be some kind of small type of teeny devices if you can press onto your skin, so it can inject a small amount of dose to your body. So it achieves prolonged therapeutic effect with the help of an implanted this drug delivery system. The injection pain associated with the frequent injections can be relieved. So there will be no painless type of things, and portable also. And also it can be administered by self.
Then mobilizing some means to fight COVID-19, because we have to think of in terms of COVID-19, because this pandemic actually has affected our lives in greater manner. So they actually, we are trying to find out how the microfluidics also is helping to fight with this COVID-19. Then actually we have seen there is a microfluidic technology that is also people are accepting, people are using or utilizing to battle with this COVID-19. So what is that? It is this real-time RT-PCR test that we are talking about. Mostly all the medical professionals, healthcare doctors, the virologists, they are talking about this type of method, PCR analysis. So there is a two major benefits that there. It is the reduced size and microfluidic integration. Then microfluidic integration for sample and reagent handling as enabled novel techniques. It is called as digital PCR, because digital means, so it is a droplet microfluidics also actually here it is playing. So you have to produce some drops from some injections or some dispensers, and then after acquiring the large number of drops in a given time, you can study the behavior and you can find the pathogen, can detect the RNAs and DNAs present in that sample. MEM scale heaters and reaction chambers have a teeny thermal mass, thereby creating a significantly faster heat cool cycle and enabling a rapid result in minutes. So MEMS technology, MEM scale heaters, actually it is being used in this technology, in this RT-PCR method, and that's why it has a faster heat cool cycle, and that's why it can give you the test results in a few minutes. So in US based company Cepheid actually has patented this type of technology, and the USA this MEMS microfluidic based RT-PCR method is widely being used there. Then micro inject printers also, you can see the low cost rapidly produced microfluidics are growing with the trend of lab on chip devices. Okay, nowadays the 3D printing technology is coming, so all the organs of human organs can be printed by the 3D printing technology. So it is, another name is the additive manufacturing technology in 3D printing. So now all the complex type of sensors also are nowadays possible using this printing technology. So now just you have to print, okay, not you have to go with the as a type of fabrication, as usual fabrication methods. So in printing machine, you can program it according to the program, so it can fabricate or it can draw the structure of your sensors. Glucose sensors, you can see. So the sweat sensor, so from the sweat actually, so there are some microfluidic channels. So so it can route the sweat excreted from your skin to the microchambers containing the calorimetric reagents for detecting glucose level. The sweat collection zones are defined by the small inlet opening at the base of the microfluidic layer. So very beautiful and very interesting devices in microfluidics. So from it can directly excrete the sweat from your body, and it can detect how much glucose level is there in our body, glucose content in our sweat. Lab on chip is a very small amount of sample is required. LOC, it integrates. Why it is called lab on chip? Because it integrates the laboratory functions, several laboratory functions on a single chip. That's why it is called lab on chip. Very faster analysis, very fast response time. Then organ on chip, you can see the all these type of organs, kidney, you can have a lungs, you can have a skin, blood vessels, anything can be mimicked and can be reproduced using the microfluidics technology, and this is called the organ on chip. So basically it will mimic the behavior of your lungs, it will mimic the behavior of your kidney, it will mimic the behavior of your heart also. So this type of technology actually is coming and is very, very emerging and booming field, organ on chip. Here actually this is one of the example. You can see the liver on chip. So liver on chip is also nowadays it is coming. The people are doing lot of research on this type of. Then lungs on chip, you can say you can create a artificial lungs okay, entire lungs on a chip, the microfluidic based environment. Okay, you can mimic the behavior of our lungs. Then also you can see it is a heart on chip that I was telling. So heart behavior, which is a very complex physiological function of heart, but it is also possible using the lab on chip technology. Intestine on chip also, it is also possible. It is there. Multi-organ on chip also, not a single organ. Now we can fabricate, okay, so many type of organs in a same chip. So there are sort of examples. Now this is some kind of fabrication aspects of microfluidic, hot embossing, replica, inject molding, soft lithography. So these are type of very normal and very regular type of fabrication process in microfluidics. That I was talking about 3D printing. In 3D printing technology also, we can create a very complex physiological systems of our human body using this technology. Then some of the examples of PDMS actually is a very biocompatible material, where that's why a lot of people are using the PDMS as a material for these organ on chip devices. You can see PDMS material. They have lung on chip, some kind of fabrication steps. Then we are moving on to the kidney on chip. We are working on this, not the kidney on chip directly actually. We are working, trying to mimic some of the functions of the human kidney using the MEMS and microfluidic study. So just I am going to the directly what actually we are doing because I have already discussed about the kidneys. Then some of the organizations are also working in our country and abroad also. You can see in Harvard, they are doing fantastic job. University of California, IIT Bombay, ISC, IIT Delhi also made the RT-PCR detection chip. Recently, IIT Kharagpur, they have made a very low cost solution for COVID virus detection. It's very, very low cost. And that is also the paper-based microfluidics. That is all the technology behind that. Some of the industries are also working well. So actually we are working to some mimic of the some functions. We are mainly concentrate on these two functions of the kidney. One is bioreactor, another is the ultrafiltration. So we are doing the modeling and the simulation, and after that we are aiming to fabricate some part of that. So the kidney has some this type of two mainly functions. One is ultrafilter bioreactor. In ultrafilter means we have to mimic the glomerulus behavior and then the reabsorption techniques. And in bioreactor also, this type of three important parameters are there. One is proximal tubule inside the kidney, distal convoluted tubule, and collecting ducts. And we are mainly concentrated on the study in proximal tubule. Here actually we are doing our study on this. We are this cell interaction stress, fluid shear stress, and size and shape dependent separation and the reabsorption. So here actually there is some sort of glimpse actually about our study. We are trying to mimic this actually proximal convoluted tubule. So the proximal tubule, if you see our human kidney structure, so it is surrounded by some blood tubule, and this blood tubule is surrounded for the reabsorption purpose, because the waste product will be excreted, but the ingredient, the protein amount, the sodium, potassium, the useful product, that will be again reabsorbed to the blood tubule. So that is the main task of the proximal tubule. So the reabsorption, how the reabsorption will be done. So we are trying to mimic of that. So we are doing some little bit study on that. We are applying all the modeling and physics of the microfluidics that I have also shown you, that Navier-Stokes equation, Euler's equations, Bernoulli's equations. So one of my student actually is doing, and then we have seen some kind of results that if that micro channel is a straight channel, the result is something. And if instead of straight channel, if you are going to some kind of slant type of channel, also we have seen this actually flow velocity is getting higher on that. If the flow velocity getting higher, that means there is a more chance of reabsorption. So the reabsorption rate also increases. Then
we are also finding the number of pipes needed for the design. So how many channels actually need to reabsorb the 60% of the fluids through the proximal convoluted tubule. So that also we have found out. Then also we have done some hydrostatic analysis on our study. Then we have incorporated deliberately some of the obstacles, okay, into the channels, and then we are going to see what kind of effects are there if we deliberately put some of the obstacles. Then actually we have seen there are some bit improvement into the velocity and the reabsorption rate. That means we are creating some kind of turbulent flow inside this micro channel by inserting some microvilli type of structures. So again, we have done so many modeling. After that mathematical modeling, that we have optimized the shape of that type of structures. So this type of shape we have seen, it is found that diagonal shape actually produces average high flow velocity, not the straight shape. The step structure having a less outflow rate. So these are some observations that we have found. So this is some likely impact of our study. The proposed work is useful for extending the life of kidney failure, because it can, if you want to mimic, if you can mimic some of the functions through your MEMS technology, then also it can help a lot for kidney on chip solutions. Those people are working for kidney on chip. So you can create a simulating environment of your kidney function, some of the functions, and then you can study also very well. And you can also study the effect of some drugs also into our kidney by creating this kind of simulation environment, simulation and modeling. Then the simulation tools, we are using this COMSOL, IntelliSuite and Coventor. All these three tools we have purchased in our lab. The students are working on that. And there are some publications we used to actually manage in these journals, and this study is actually ongoing study. So my student is working also. Now this is the very last part. I will take only 2 to 3 minutes just talking about my National MEMS Device Center in NIT Silchar. So here we can see we are working on the, not only this is one of the field that we are working some mimicking function, but apart, in addition to this, we are working on other fields also, like RF MEMS switches, RF MEMS filters, reconfigurable antennas, energy harvesting, drug delivery systems. Then some of the faculty members are involved and scholars are also involved in my MEMS Design Center. Then some of the scholars, she is working on the very good work. She has done very good work on MEMS switches, reconfigurable antennas. So she is working on the hybrid MEMS energy harvester in energy field. We are working on that. Then this scholar actually, he is working on this mimicking human organs. Mostly we have taken of kidney actually to mimic the functions of kidney. Then she is working on the accelerometer for Parkinson detection. She is working on the MEMS tunable filter for 5G applications. And it is also the RF MEMS category that I told you. For 5G application, these RF MEMS devices, tunable filters, inductors, the resonators are going to find a good place. Some of the acknowledgement, the research collaboration in our country that I join hand with them and we are working together. And also I'm looking for the more collaborations in this field. Some of the international research collaborations. So we have some joint projects with them also. We are working on that. This is my research students, and also looking for more students who are more inclined to pursue their research on this MEMS domain. For the scopes, maybe MEMS switches, filters, microfluidics also one of the scope, biomems another scope, energy harvesting also if someone is interested to work on that. And also I'm working on a little bit on VLSI analog circuits, also some optimization mechanism. So thank you for your interest. So I wish a big success of this lecture series, and students can gain a lot of things and they will implement this actually this study among the whole 7 days lecture series into their real life. So I special thanks to Professor Sunil that who has contacted me for these deliberations, and I'm happy also to be part of that. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the wonderful session, sir. Participants, if you have any queries, you can post him through his mail ID, which will be posted in chat window shortly. Sorry for the time constraints. Participants are asked to post your queries through his mail ID, which will be posted in our WhatsApp group as well as in our chat window shortly. Thank you so much, sir, for readily accepting our invitation and for being with us today. We are sure that this session is much informative and would have given an insight to the world of organ-on-chip in microfluidics technology. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And we are thankful to the participants for their great response to the course and your attention for today. We assure you that your expectation will be taken care of. And about tomorrow, our upcoming session is on point of care diagnosis by Dr. Karthikeyan on 31st July tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. I request all our beloved participants to extend their support throughout the schedule and get benefited. We request everyone to attend the quiz without fail, which is available in our Google Classroom as well as in our chat window. We request all the participants to kindly finish off the quiz of today's session before 11 a.m. tomorrow. And another announcement.
Dear participants, please attend the poll question.
We have an announcement for the participants. We are planning to make a quick collage from the Zoom during our final session tomorrow to look back and cherish and to leave your print as a memorable for our CMNGF. Let's turn on your cameras and pose for being an integral part of our lab's everlasting journey. We look forward for your active participation in the final session. Let's create a moment. Thank you.
Lingaraja sir, kindly post the second poll, sir.
Participants can answer the poll question and you can officially sign off the session. Thank you. Meet you all in our next session. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Yes. Shall I end the session? Dinesh Ram sir and Ramya
Yes,
ma'am?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.